You've been through the process, the applications, the silence, the near misses, and now you have an interview. But here's what's key to remember. You have to walk in with everything that's real about your experience, including the struggle, and you will still be the strongest candidate. Your value isn't determined by how long this search is taken. Your worth isn't measured by how many rejections you got before this moment. Your skills, your perspective, everything about you professionally is still intact and it has not been diminished. My name is Holly Peak, founder and executive career strategist at Ascend Pro Solutions. And after more than a decade leading talent acquisition at some of the world's most successful companies, I can tell you this. The strongest candidates that we hired were the ones who came through the fire and came through it knowing who they were and what they had to offer. Today, Aaron Mitchell and I are going to reconnect you to that clarity. We're going to equip you with tactics and skills for preparation before you even walk in the room. We're going to remind you how to tell your story with conviction. And we're going to make sure that you walk out knowing that you left everything on the table, regardless of the outcome. You're still in this. And in fact, you're more prepared than you even think. Let's get started.
Hey.
Hey, man.
Thanks for that intro, Holly. How you doing today?
I'm great, man. How about you?
Yeah.
I'm
doing all right. I think we'll get into it as we talk through just what's going on in the world and what's going on as folks try to navigate this job market.
Absolutely.
Holly and I, by the way, my name is Aaron Craig Mitchell, founder, CEO of Acme, career coaching, executive coaching. Holly and I got together back on November 18th, and we talked about the hidden emotional cost of the just career process, the job process. And today we wanted to take a deeper look into interviewing, and specifically interviewing when you're empty, when you're depleted, and how do you bring confidence to the table when your confidence is low? Oftentimes people think that their biggest obstacle in the interview process is their resume or how they interview, how they tell their story. But actually, it's our nervous system. You ever see elite athletes get to the finals and then choke?
Yeah, man.
Right? Like that's not preparation. That's nerves. That's mental health.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to spend some time talking today about how do you navigate this thing with your mental health in mind. Now, out of curiosity, for folks that are on, and thank y'all for joining us, drop in the chat how you would describe your pre-interview mindset, whether it's anxious, hopeful, numb, or confident, or some other descriptor. Drop that word in the chat. We'll be checking the chat as we move along. But however you're coming into the interview process, today we're going to talk through ways to show up grounded, even when you don't feel full.
Yeah.
We're going to set the stage by describing what's happening with your emotions, really talking through like what's going on in your nervous system. Talk through ways to prepare when you're already feeling depleted. Talk through how to deal with hard interview questions, those ones that get you off center. Share tips on how to recover after you've gone through the interview process. And then also provide some confidence builders to keep your head in the game in between interviews. Because if you're in the game these days, you know, this is probably 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds. And you have to be able to get up like a boxer and just keep going.
Yeah.
Holly, what else do we want to say?
No, that boxer analogy is great. It's being able to sustain yourself round after round after round. It made me think of the Muhammad Ali. Why am I blanking on his name? The Thriller in Manila. Muhammad Ali, George Foreman fight,
Yeah.
right? Where for rounds and rounds and rounds, this man was taking a beating, right? He just had to lay on the ropes and just allow the opponent to exhaust themselves while he regained his own strength, right? This job search is a lot like that right now. It is exhausting and it can feel like you are just taking a beating round after round after round. But the most important thing to remember is to fall back on your training, to fall back on your experience, to remember who you are in the face of adversity. And we're going to help you remember that.
Awesome. And then, Holly, we always like to say, you know, we're not mental health professionals.
Yeah,
Can
man.
you provide folks with just a quick set of
Just
things to
people who
think about
care.
as we jump into this? Yeah.
Yeah, just people who care, man. So uh, it's important to me. I know you often have mentioned like this is a matter of the heart for both of us.
Hmm.
And I think for me, it's really a calling, right? It's a point where I get to blend my professional purpose with my personal passion. You know, I had a friend who took his life in 2020, and the last conversation we had was him feeling like he was trapped in this state of unemployment, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know how he was going to make ends meet and things like that. And so that stays in the back of my mind, man. Every time I talk to somebody who's going through something like this, it's like, okay, what can I offer them? How can I help them? What can I do to make their situation better? And we do what we can, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we always encourage, look, we do what we can, we care. We're going to provide as much guidance and insight, the same stuff we would provide to our clients. But if you don't have a mental health professional, a therapist, please add them to your care team,
Yeah.
because we're one component of the village that
Yeah.
we think is necessary to get you through.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
man.
right, so let's jump in, Holly.
Yeah, man. Let's do it.
So most folks come to career coaches for strategies on how to ace the interview, right?
Yeah.
The questions to ask, the stories to tell, the cheat code for being seen as the best and the brightest. But we're talking about emotions.
Hmm.
Why?
Because I think that's what's needed right now, right? It's not another, 5 questions to ask in your interview or 7 tweaks to your LinkedIn profile to get you noticed. It's That's not the time that we're in, right? Here's the truth. You can have the perfect resume, most compelling stories, all the right answers prepared, but if you walk into that room emotionally drained, none of that preparation matters. The interviewer will be able to tell too, right? As trained professionals, we know how to read body language. We know how to pick up on nonverbal cues. We know when something just doesn't connect. And you're going to leave that interview wondering what went wrong when you said all the right things.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're talking about emotions. We're talking about emotions because emotions aren't separate from interview performance. They're really the foundation of it.
Now, let's dig into that a little bit more, right? You,
Yeah,
you,
man.
you talk about the fact that, look, we are good interviewers, because let's be clear, not all interviewers are trained at reading body language and things of
Yeah.
that nature. But when it comes to like how those things show up, what's going on in your mind when you see somebody who might be going through it and maybe not owning it or not disclosing whatever it is you think you need to hear in that moment? What's going on in your mind?
Um, it's a few things. I think the most common is brain fog. When you're in the interview and you know you have a great example and you just go blank, or the words can't present themselves in a coherent manner like you want them to, right?
Mm-hmm.
You end up giving a mediocre answer for something that you are truly passionate about and can do in your sleep. That is usually a telltale sign of mental fatigue or anxiety or overstimulation. You said it earlier. This is about regulation of your nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about how qualified you are, because the fact that you are even in the interview itself means that you are qualified to do the job. I can't stress this enough. Recruiters cannot waste their time, especially now when
Hmm.
there is as much talent in the market as there is. Recruiters have to be that much more intentional and diligent about how they structure their time. So the fact that you are interviewing means that you're somebody who's been earmarked as someone who can do this job. So let's take that off the table. We take
Hmm.
qualifications off the table and let's just deal with now, how do I regulate myself? How do I show up when I don't feel it? I'm sluggish, I'm low energy, I'm in a desperate financial situation, you know, kids
Yeah.
need shoes, all the things that are external that are playing into our psyche. How do we regulate that? And it has to start with recognizing it, right? So brain fog is really a key. Um, Fidgeting, and that's not to say that some people just naturally fidget. You can't see my hands right now, but I always have to be doing something with my hands. I am a natural fidgeter, so that doesn't always convey, nervous system disruption, but it
Hmm.
can be a distraction to the interview team. So it is something that you want to watch out for.
Well,
How about you? What I don't want to
I'm,
dominate this because I know you have a wealth of knowledge
yeah,
as well.
I'm happy to jump in, but I have
Yeah,
one more question as you were saying this, right? Like,
please.
is there ever a time where like this isn't a thing? Like, I know this is a really, really tough job market, right?
Yeah.
But like, isn't the whole interview process kind of designed to like
Mhm.
stress people out just a little bit? I'm not saying it's designed that way on purpose, but like by design, because
Does it
again, like
in
let's
yeah,
go back to the sports analogy, right?
yeah,
When you get to, my wife is a big tennis fan, so by extension, I watch a lot of tennis.
mm,
So you get to the finals, both players want that trophy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So by design, like it's a high pressure situation.
yeah,
In the interview process, you talked about like people don't typically interview when they don't need a job,
yeah,
right? They don't typically get to the final rounds of an interview when they don't need it.
yeah,
Now, somebody might need it more than the other, but like you're there because you need more money, a better situation, a better commute, shoes on your child's feet, like you said.
yeah,
So how do you not bring emotional weight into the interview process if this is true?
yeah. I think that harkens to something called the performance paradox, right? The more you need the job, the harder it is to perform naturally in the interview. The way you overcome that is by falling back, and I don't want to get ahead of the conversation, but falling on something I call your preloaded greatest hits, right? It's like a track list. It's like knowing I am great at these six things and constantly reminding yourself. Again, not to jump ahead, but something that I coach clients on is 10 minutes before your interview, you're going to write down or you're going to write down 5 bullet points that you know you excel in, or you're going to read back over thank you notes, past performance reviews, uh, client satisfaction surveys, whatever it is that can remind you of who you are before you walk into that room. That's what you need right now.
Hmm.
The performance paradox, to your point, it's not going anywhere, right? Interviews are, and I want to be clear. Yes, interviews incite emotions,
Hmm.
right? Anxiety, excitement. Anxiety and excitement are really just the same thing. It's just depending on what perspective you look at it through, right?
Hmm.
Um, yes, they are designed to do those things because one of the things we're evaluating is how well you can handle yourself under pressure, right? The difference is, and what I want to make clear is, recruiters aren't intentionally trying to put you in a position to see you fail.
Hmm.
You and I know a lot of recruiters. Most of them, 95% of them, are great at what they do and really want to help candidates get to the role that's best for them, right? They want to
Right.
see that mutual benefit. The 5% we're not going to worry about. But most recruiters, most uh, people that you talk to in this process, they have a vested interest in this too.
Hmm.
They have work that needs to get done, right? And so we want to see you succeed. It's just about making sure that you have the presence of mind to meet the moment.
Yep. Yep. And what I'll say before we transition to really like let's say the interview pregame
Yeah, man.
is just
Yeah.
that like there's a couple things. One,
Yeah.
we are talking about emotions and we all have them. They are all normal.
Yeah.
There's a range of them that I think we maybe don't want to experience because they make us feel like we're out of control.
Yeah.
But it is having an emotional experience when you're talking about things that you've done, when you're talking about what you want to do and the stakes are high,
Yeah.
are normal. And when you're depleted, when you are like exhausted, when you have other factors that you're solving for, because maybe you've been at this thing much longer than you expected to be at.
Yeah.
Maybe you're interviewing for the first time without already having a job, right? Because maybe you've only ever done it when you had security. This adds to, let's say, the range of emotions that you might experience.
Yeah.
Let's say when you're at your best, you can experience 5 or 6 emotions, right? I've got a really dope poker face. So that's my sweet spot, right?
You
But
do.
like
A
but
lot of people
when
don't know this. You've interviewed me, so we should
yes,
probably tell that story. But yes, you do have a great poker face. Go.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But you know, when I'm not in control, maybe that 6 emotions is 12 emotions and therefore 6 of those are emotions I'm not used to experiencing in front of people,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so the question then becomes like, what do I do to
Yeah.
keep the emotions that I feel are appropriate in these settings contained?
Yeah.
And what do I do when I can't contain them
Yeah.
and I'm experiencing normal human emotions in abnormal scenarios? So I wanted to make that clear because like sometimes people say things about emotions as if there's some abnormal experience. We all
Mm-hmm.
experience them. We all experience them all the time. It is absolutely normal, but our normal and somebody else's normal are different,
100. Yeah.
and our normal under duress is a little unpredictable.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. It does. Yeah.
So
So,
go ahead. You
no.
gonna
No.
tell
No.
that story real
No.
quick?
No. No. Let's. So for people that don't know, when I was interviewing for Netflix, Aaron was one of the people on my interview loop, and it was probably one of the most difficult interviews I've had because here I am interviewing for a leadership role at the company, right? This is where I want to be. Um, by the way, I had interviewed for Netflix a couple years prior and tanked it. Like I did not do well in that interview. So the fact that I was even getting a second chance was already astonishing to me. But here we are a couple years later, and instead of interviewing for an IC role, I'm interviewing for a leadership role. So I got all the emotions happening. I got all the nerves happening, right? And at the very first second that we click on and go and enter the room, there's a sense of elation, right? Because it's like, oh, here's somebody who I can automatically see myself in, right? There is a commonality just in the physical attributes, right? It's like, oh, okay, cool. All right, let's go. As that interview progresses and the questions get harder, I'm like, oh no, I can't read him. The things that as a recruiter I'm trained to do, right? I'm trained to uh, win people over through scenarios and stories. I'm trained to, like I said, look at nonverbal cues. I'm trained to ask poignant questions that are going to get to the root of the question, get to the root of the matter. And here these same tricks are being applied to me, and I can see them in real time. He is flat, um, and I start to panic. And I think the one question that you asked that it was towards the end that got me to really calm my emotions down. It was a great grounding question for me. It was, and we've talked about this. How do you define legacy, right? And that question, as abstract as it may seem to anybody on the outside looking at the job description, it hit really, really hard for me because like we just talked about, that's why I do what I do. And I think I even quoted my kids at the time were crazy about Hamilton. So I think I even quoted a line from Hamilton. I was like, legacy is planting seeds in the garden you might not see grow. And but I meant that thing, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
now looking back as I've transitioned out of Netflix and I'm on to doing other things, that's exactly what I did. I planted seeds in a garden I don't get to see grow, but I feel great about it, right? I just remember that experience as one of those where I really had to regulate my nervous system because I couldn't read you. So yes, you have a ridiculous poker face.
I'm sorry. And I always apologize to people up front. Like, this is
Yeah,
just who I am. I'm not trying to be difficult.
yeah,
But I've just spent a lot of time actually doing a lot of the stuff that we're talking about so that I
yeah,
have some agency in these high stress moments. Because honestly, like, being the interviewer brings its own set of stresses. Like, I never want to be
sure.
seen as incompetent.
Yeah,
I don't want you to be like, oh, we have some affinity and then disappoint you. So like,
yeah,
there's a lot that I'm doing to sort of keep my excitement or nervousness at bay.
yeah,
Um, and so transitioning into then like the grounding before game time.
yeah. The pregame.
So yeah, the interview pregame. So
Yeah,
let's say I'm preparing for an interview and I really, really, really want this job and really need this job. Like, I want it, I need it, and sometimes I can't tell the difference between the two, so they're conflated. Um, but I'm spent. I'm
yeah,
emotionally spent.
yeah.
How would you help me prepare?
Uh, I would want to. We do something called emotional routine reset, right? What that is basically taking however you spend your normal day, a non-interview day. We're going to disrupt that, right? If you wake up at 6 a.m., get your coffee, take a shower, make breakfast for the kids. I'm actually going through my routine. We're going to disrupt that the day of an interview, right? First things first is making sure, and I want to stress this, it doesn't have to do with emotions, but it is important. Schedule your interviews for times that work for you. When you have a coordinator who's working with you on behalf of the hiring team and they're asking for your availability, don't give them times that you don't operate at your best. It does not serve you to schedule an interview at 4 p.m. on a Thursday when you've had a whole week and now you're at the tail end of it, just trying to claw yourself to Friday, right?
Mhm.
If you know, like I know I'm at my best between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., right? I'm gonna schedule an interview. I'm gonna give my availability between those times when I know my mind is the sharpest.
Right.
So, getting back to the emotional reset, we're gonna work on three things: breathing, music, and mantra. Mantra, I like to, it's interchangeable with motivation, but let's talk about breathing. So, breathing, we've heard it is very cliche. It is required though to reset your nervous system, to calm yourself down. This can be, hours before the interview, minutes before the interview. You want to do 4, 4, and 4, right? It's inhale for 4, hold for 4, release for 4. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, release for 4. And you want to do that 4 times, right? Studies have shown, even I think they even did research on Navy SEALs. This is what they do in high stress combat moments. These breathing techniques will actually reset your nervous system. Another thing that's great for that is music. The reason why music works so well is because it bypasses the intellectual and it gets straight to the emotional. That's why no matter who you are, there's not a person on this planet that doesn't like music because it's deeper than sounds, it's vibration. So you have to tap into whatever your style of music is that puts you in the most confident place, right? Some people it's hip hop, for me it's jazz. Whatever it is for you, that needs to be loud and clear, piping into your head early.
Mhm.
And the third thing is mantra or motivation. I'm not big on like mantras, and I am big on affirmations, but I don't. Day of an interview, I'm not repeating things to myself. What I am doing is I'm listening to. I have a favorite motivational speaker. His name is Les Brown. I'm dating myself at this point. He goes way back.
Mhm.
Um, My mom used to every morning in the car, she would play these Les Brown tapes. And it's funny how that's stuck with me now through adulthood to where now my kids hear me playing it in the morning. But whatever that mantra, whatever those affirmations are, whatever that motivation is that's going to get you into a ready state, you anchor on that. There's another thing called the bilateral stimulation method, right? That's for people who are highly anxious like me, right? Some people who really have a hard time sitting still. Um, for me, it's you put your both hands on your knees and you alternate tapping your knees, left, right, left, right, left, right, while at the same time breathing normally. Studies have shown this is key to regulating your nervous system because it takes your mind and it splits what you're doing into two places.
Mhm.
The mind, the brain is very it tends to like to focus on one thing in particular and anchor onto that. And so when you disrupt it by giving it something else and a few other things happening all at the same time, it can break whatever that train of thought is that you're on. So if you're in a self-deprecating thought pattern, doing this, breathing normally, disrupting your nervous system will help break that thought pattern.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, man.
And it's one, I'd love for folks who are listening, watching, to drop in the comments any rituals that they use before big moments, because I think everything that you said resonates with me just in terms of either my own preparation or, let's say, things that I draw from. But
Hmm.
I'm always learning like something new,
Yeah,
like from somebody. Like I was talking to a client the other day, and like impromptu, we sort of did a 2x2 of like, here are, your sort of your emotion or your feelings
yeah,
and the outcomes in these two independent variables. And like just going through the process of understanding how the feelings, which are independent and for the most part are a choice, actually don't necessarily have a negative or positive impact on the outcome.
yeah.
But this person was depriving themselves of feeling good because they're like, but if I
Mhm.
feel bad, then I won't be so upset by a negative outcome. And just
Mm.
seeing it in front of them, they're like, that was dumb, right? Like, I would always choose to be positive. I would always choose a positive mindset because even if I don't get the outcome I want, I'm better off. And just the visual sort of in the moment and going through that exercise in real time was like the boost that they needed to get out of
Yeah,
their head about not
yeah.
feeling good about what's out of control.
I
And
like that.
this
Yeah.
is one
Oh,
of those
no,
things,
no.
right?
Yeah. I like that a lot. It's very similar. So it's a one to one. So typically, I've had a candidate. I'm sorry, I've had a client in the past where we've written them out. We've written out best case scenario. We've written out worst case scenario. That way, whatever happens in real time, we've already began to process those emotions. The brain can't really distinguish between emotional process that your emotions that you're processing now or in the past, right? That's why memories can be so vivid, right? It can almost feel like you're reliving it, right? So by facing them, by putting out best case scenario, worst case scenario, write it out. Write out, I got the job. I negotiated the salary I wanted. Can't wait to start. Write out, I got rejected. They
Mm-hmm.
said that I didn't show up with enough. They didn't really get a sense that I was really excited about this role. Next time I know to regulate myself a bit better, to show them how I'm really interested. Face those things early so that no matter what happens, you can make peace with it in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, like we are not therapists, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I remembered having that conversation, a similar conversation with my therapist. And it was in the context of like the best teacher is death, right? And
Mm.
if you can sit with the idea of losing someone that is important to you, right? And like you can really do that processing up front,
Mm.
then when whatever happens, you're sort of prepared for a worst case scenario and you're prepared with a mindset of gratitude.
Wow.
And I think about that in the same perspective of like getting a job or getting a promotion or whatever these things are that we sort of struggle with in this business context. It's like
Yeah.
when you can really sit with like, here's how it went wrong, and what do I do to move forward?
Yeah.
You create this sort of winning mindset,
That's good.
and you're in the process of building the resilience that's required for these hard things, because
Yeah.
ultimately what we're talking about, this sort of interviewing when you're empty, is really
Yeah.
about how are we building resilience before we need it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So as consultants, I think one of the strongest things you can do for any, we do discovery meetings all the time, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things I do is I show up positioned to be curious about how I can solve your problems. So I think as candidates, it would serve well to show up with that mindset. I'm not a candidate, I'm a consultant. I'm here to find out what problems you're having and ways to solve those problems. Who do I need to collaborate with? What's already in place? What haven't you thought about? I think that level of curiosity can really shift a lot of anxious energy. Instead
Hmm.
of being some supplicant begging for a job, you're a consultant. You're a subject matter expert
Hmm.
that's coming in to really work on solving some problems for the company.
And I like that as a segue to our next little segment around
Yeah,
answering hard questions with strength and grace.
yeah,
Now, I've worked with a lot of consultants, and consultants, when it comes to the business context, are typically the kicking post when something goes wrong,
yeah,
right? So if we're preparing to be consultants, this is actually a really good segue.
yeah,
So oftentimes in the interview process, you know, it feels like interviewers, maybe not recruiters, but interviewers are trying to trip us up, right? For example, what were you doing between, 2000 and 2002? There seems to be this gap on your resume. What's that all about? Or 2020 to 2022? Or, you know, I guess, one, give us a little insight into what's going on in the mind of the interviewer when they're asking those hard questions, when they're asking those questions that sometimes seem like traps, or at least maybe traps to us, depending on what happened in that time period. And then
yeah.
let's talk through like strategies for how to overcome that.
Yeah. So I think reframing this. So for me, as I said, I want to be clear. Most interviewers aren't trying to trip you up, right? They're really just trying to see how you think through challenging scenarios. Have you done it before? And if you haven't, are you honest enough to say that you haven't done it before, but give me an example of how you'd approach it, right? So I'm not. There may be. There may be some interviewers who are trying to trip you up, but for the
I know a
most
few. I
part,
know a few. So
that's why I'm like, yeah. But for the most part, people are really just trying to see how you arrive at your decisions. So one of the ways you can combat that, and I think we touched on it just a little bit during our last conversation, is to have these stories, these wins preloaded, right? Knowing that if I need to show an example of how so really you can break down your stories in three ways, right? Number one, there's the investigator. How have you cross, cross functionally collaborated with teams to really find out what was going on, and then you were able to influence without direct authority, right? Number two is the problem solver. Really, it's really no. I'm sorry. It's the investigator, it's the collaborator, and then it's the rebounder, right? The investigator is really just trying to influence without authority. The collaborator is trying to, bring people together for a mission that's larger than just your department. The rebounder is somebody who can own a shortcoming or a misstep or a failure, but can show how they've learned from it, how they pivoted, how they're better as a result of it, right? Those are just three examples of stories you can have preloaded so that when you do have a difficult question that comes up, you can tweak that thing. You can adjust it to meet the question and answer it the way you want to convey what the information that they need, but also give them insights into who you are as a professional and some of the attributes that you bring to the table. Um, I think understanding that and being able to reframe it in the moment, um, even if you do feel like they're trying to trip you up or trying to give you a tricky question, the fact of the matter is it's still on you to answer it. And so
Mhm.
the way you get over that hump is to reframe it, is to restructure it as, general curiosity of how do you handle these stressful situations.
Yep. Well, let me ask you this, right? Because
Yeah.
like one, like how do you practice that, right? Because it's sometimes hard to imagine what hard questions someone might ask, especially if there are areas of
Yeah.
your background that you're like, look, I just let's not discuss this, right?
Yeah.
Now, I asked that question. I have an approach which is like I always try to get people to like talk about the hard stuff. Like
Yeah.
bring that up before somebody else can bring that up. Like when
Yeah.
in the tell me about yourself question, you might want to talk about that 18-month gap in your resume,
Yeah.
right? Because if you have an openness to areas that might be considered quote unquote weaknesses or areas that might trip you up,
Yeah.
own it up front because then somebody can't use that quote unquote against you further on. But do you have other ways that you think about preparing somebody for
Yeah.
these trips or these traps?
Yeah. So I just had a discovery with a potential client, named her Maya, senior product manager, who is constantly challenged by the fact that they're seasoned, right? They've been doing this for years. So they think that they're automatically being disqualified for younger candidates, right?
Mhm.
And what my advice to them is you anchor on evidence, not emotions. And what anchoring on evidence looks like is to what we talked about earlier. We go through and we look at our wins. We look at the things that we've actually accomplished. We look at the metrics, the revenue, the sales, whatever the case may be. We looked at the things that have made a company better as a result of me being there. And you anchor on that. You walk in the room as that person. So that in these moments when you are asked a question that you feel a little tripped up by, you can go to your mind. Like I said, it's a track list. You're loading your greatest hits. You can say, okay, all right, track 4, and you play that thing, right? And that is the person that shows up. Even if you have to have it in front of you, 5, 6 tracks of my greatest hits, and you anchor on that. You anchor on your achievement. You anchor on the evidence of your achievement, and not your emotion.
Mhm.
You practice that, right?
Yeah.
And by doing that, and even if you do that outside of an interview uh, loop or an interview period or a process, take the time now. Even if you're not interviewing right now, take the time now to work on those 3 stories.
Yep.
And again, if you need help, reach out. I can help you out with that. I'm not, soliciting. I'm not like, just reach out. I would genuinely help you frame those stories so that when the time comes, you really can anchor on those wins and that evidence of who you are.
And one thing I'll add to this, right? And I was thinking about this as you were giving your example. I tell people a lot. I'm an acquired taste. And
Say more.
what that means is like I'm not going to connect with everybody in the interview process.
Hmm.
And sometimes I think what's happening when you're experiencing the tripping up
Yeah.
is that like because it's really hard for someone who wants to see you win to engage in tripping you up in the process.
Right.
It's not uncommon for someone who's like, I don't think this person is right. I'm not really, meshing with this person to ask questions that then validate their
What
point of
they're
view,
already.
right?
Yeah.
So if that is happening and there's nothing I can do to overcome that, then I just in my mind will self-correct and be like, you know what? Maybe I'm just not this person's taste. And that's fine because
Hmm.
I'm not everybody's taste.
Yeah.
And if me and this person don't hit it off, this place may not be for me unless this interviewer is not the key decision maker. Hopefully their perspective does not prevent me from connecting with others throughout the process. But ultimately, and we talked about this earlier, like if what's not meant for me won't be for me, right? And what is meant for me will be for me. I'm always going to put in the effort. I'm always going to put in the amount of time and energy to prepare, to answer questions fully and completely and with the emotional resonance that's required. But if I can't make a connection with somebody across the table, I'm not going to I'm going to try not to beat myself up about that, because I'm not for everybody.
Now,
Right.
how do you temper that when behind the scenes the bills are mounting, the pressure is on? How do you stay grounded in that what's not for me isn't for me? You know, what's for me is for me.
Therapy. I mean, I'm being real, right? Like
Yeah.
it's it's one of those things where you have to keep finding positive reinforcement so that you believe what you say to yourself. Because like sometimes I think that you have to engage in somewhat delusional thinking to make it through these processes,
Absolutely.
because you
Yeah.
have to really believe that, okay, if this didn't work, it's because something else will. If
Yeah.
this didn't work, it's because something else will. You and I talked about The Alchemist, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it? Was it earlier this year you recommended The
It
Alchemist to me?
was. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was in the summer. Yeah.
Yeah, we had reconnected after a couple, like not speaking for a little while.
Yeah.
And I was telling you about this stuff I was doing. You're like, have you read The Alchemist? I was like, no,
Yeah.
never. So I read it.
Yeah.
And I like,
Yeah.
this book is perfect. But one of
Yeah.
the things that, and I'm gonna butcher the precise saying, you'll probably nail it. But essentially, when you are committed to a particular destiny,
Yeah.
the world conspires to make it true, to make it so, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we get in our minds that this job is that destiny. And then we get all sort of wrapped up in that, not knowing that, okay, it wasn't this, but this made the way for something else.
Yeah.
And this no just gets me closer to a yes. But again, like you have to believe it, you have to reinforce it. And then when you are depleted, you have to go to other people who remind you of that thing that you said about yourself and who tell you how amazing you are, right?
That's
So
key. That's key.
because it's hard, and it's
Yeah.
like it's especially hard when the losses are mounting up.
Yeah.
So I'll be the first to say, like, yeah, like sometimes the answer is I don't know. I'm just hoping I can get to tomorrow where I feel better about what happened yesterday
Yeah.
and there's a little bit more distance. But there's some days where it's just like, leave me alone because I need to wallow in my self pity, but I'll be fine tomorrow.
Just for a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Give me this.
And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So speaking of that, right? Like you finish the interview, and
Mm.
sometimes the hardest part of the interview is when it's done and there's that montage running through your head of either all the things that went wrong or,
Yeah.
on rare occasion, all the things that went right. And now you're like, maybe it went too well. Maybe were they too nice? Did they count me out? So what should folks do after the interview? What do you do to recover and to
Yeah.
boost effort?
Yeah. You have to have a post interview routine. And here's why. So all the preparation, all the anxiety, all the excitement, everything that goes into the actual act of showing up and being present in that room, your brain is being flooded with adrenaline, cortisol, all the stress emotions or all the stress chemicals, right? And so you're having an emotional reaction to that. For some people, their palms sweat. For some people, their mouth dries. For some people, their heart starts pounding. And you're trying to regulate this in real time. That's expending a lot of energy. But then it ends. And when it's over, now you're left with that. You close the laptop, whatever you do next, you're carrying that with you. So the first thing I tell candidates after an interview, you have to physically represent the end of something, right? So if it's your laptop, close it. If it's the room that you were interviewing in, walk out of it, close the door, take a walk, get something to eat, something to shift the brain activity, right? Something else that I think we have to look out for is the adrenaline drop and what that does, especially for and I'm always anchor on introverts, right? I think for us it hits a little different because interviews by design are great places to showcase your skills as an extrovert, right? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your wins. Let's talk and let's get to know each other. Let's build a relationship. Well, for an introvert, we process a lot more internally, right?
Mm-hmm.
We find those moments, but they don't come as quickly or in such an upfront and out front way as it does for extroverts. So when we're out of the interview process, when we're out of these rooms where we've had to maintain eye contact, we've had to, keep a certain posture, and we've had to, keep our nonverbal cues in check. Those things expend a lot of energy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to watch out for is the emotional and chemical depletion that your brain is now going through. So whatever it is, you mentioned your circle, those people who can speak into you, right? Reach out to them. Hey, I just got done with this interview. I'm not sure how it's gonna go, um, and allow them to tell you why you're right for this role, and allow them to tell you that even if, just like you said, even if this role isn't the one for you, here's why you're still good at what you do it, and here's why it doesn't define who you are. You have to allow other people to speak into you when you're low in your reserve.
Yep. And on that, right? Because you talk about the introvert sort of need to process, recharge, etc. We talked about this. The extrovert isn't necessarily being fed in the interview process if they're not making that connection, right?
Hmm.
So I talk about so I'm an extrovert, and so I think this dynamic is actually perfect because we can speak to both
Mm-hmm.
sides of it. Like if I go into an interview process and I'm unable to make that connection with somebody, I'm unable to feel that energy, I
Yeah.
walk out the interview process actually depleted, not because in the same way you expended energy,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get the energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that sort of post interview check in is even more important because it's like, dang it, if I didn't get it there, I need it from somewhere because now like my body was ready for that dopamine hit and
Yeah.
I'm empty.
Yeah.
So I think having a ritual, a post interview ritual that matches how you get your energy
Yeah.
is super important, and having contingencies, right? To your point where it's like, okay, if I got this, I'm good. Now, an extrovert's always going to be happy to get more energy. So it could be the same regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that that energy source needs to be somebody who hypes you up,
Yeah.
right? Like knowing that it's like, who is my cheerleader? Who's the
Yeah.
person who's going to tell me, like, you're one of one, you're number one for the Beyonce fans, right? Like I need that person,
Yeah.
and whatever the song is that I need to play in my headphones to sort of like get me centered.
Yeah.
But again, I think matching your that ritual accordingly and knowing who you are is super important.
And something else that I don't think is encouraged enough. It's okay to give it 24 hours. Oftentimes we want to follow up, day of, we want to thank you for your time, but let it breathe, right? Let it
Mm-hmm.
breathe. I've even fallen victim to this. Like when I think that when I'm a little anxious about how it went, or when I feel like, yeah, I killed that, I knocked it out the park. I want to immediately follow up, but let it breathe.
Yeah.
Because what that does is, again, that gives your nervous system a chance to kind of separate itself from the actual event and kind of reset. You'll be clearer. You'll have more clarity. You'll be able to structure your thank you note a little bit better when you've had a little distance from it. Um, Emotional distance is a good thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So then you finish the interview.
yeah,
you've done your post-interview ritual, you hyped yourself up going into it,
Yeah.
but now let's say you know that there's going to be another, you're sort of round two of five. What do you do between these interviews? Because if we're talking about energy being low,
Yeah.
like we are in a marathon,
Yeah.
or we're running that 5K that you told me about.
Yeah.
Like how do I pace myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do I get to the end?
It's difficult. I think it has to start with community. So tapping into your cheerleader, your people, creating emotional distance, um, and also busying yourself in other ways, finding other ways to put that anxious energy to use. Right? If you have a hobby, now is the time to feed that hobby. If you have a passion, if you've neglected something, like for me, I can tell you I got a honey-do list that is ridiculous right now. Now is the time that I need to start to cross some of those things off, get in the yard, do some of the things that I've been neglecting because I need to take my mind off of things that I can't control. And the reality is, this piece of the puzzle, you cannot control. There are so many external factors that are playing right now. After the interviews are done, you and I know this is when the work for us begins because now we got to collect feedback. We got to have a debrief. We got to start, we got to take another look at the budget and the range and the salary expectations for the client. And we got to piece all these things together. We got to do a proposal. Once a candidate is selected, we got to put all that information together, present it to the business with the justification of why we're moving forward. Like there are so many factors that the candidate really isn't aware of that has nothing to do with them. Sometimes, and I can admit this, a candidate has followed up with me, maybe a day after the interview, and I don't have information for them. And I have to be honest with them and tell them, hey, we are still in the process of making a decision. I know at a time like this, when you've been searching for 8 months, the bills are stacking up. The last thing you want to hear is, give me till next week and I'll be able to follow up with you.
Yep.
That creates another level of anxiety. So what I can tell you, and for any recruiters out there that are listening, it is imperative that you do follow up and that you are forthcoming with that. If you all still haven't made a decision, say that. Even if you know that you made a decision, that they're leaning towards a decision, but they're not really ready to disqualify the candidates, there's a way that you can still say, hey, we're still in the decision-making process. We're still evaluating candidates. Give me to the end of next week. But radio silence is not acceptable.
Right.
Ghosting is never acceptable. We're professionals. So we need to remain professional. These are people's lives and people's livelihoods that we're dealing with. So communication is a non-negotiable.
And
Now,
I'd go
okay.
as far as to say the recruitment teams that prioritize connectivity with humans, even when they don't have clarity, win. Like, because it sucks not knowing. Like the not knowing is the hardest part of this process, right? And so if it's just like, hey, we'll get back to you by Friday, and then we get back to you on Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't turn out well, I'm putting that employer in good graces. And that was actually like one of the fun things about running recruitment teams, like making that a competitive advantage, because I knew that if we needed to come back to that candidate at some point, like that person was going to be super receptive, even if they got rejected, because they understood like, y'all treated me so fair. You treated me like a human. I really appreciate that. And like, because so many employers aren't doing that or are trying to do that with AI, it's such a game changer, and it doesn't actually cost more to like be cordial and
zero cost.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's sort of a PSA to the recruiters out there that can, like, that's huge. And to your point, Holly, right? You don't need to have definitive answers to provide that kind of clarity to somebody. But on the flip side, as a candidate, it can just be asking for and trying to understand, like, when should I expect XYZ? And
Mm-hmm.
can I do XYZ if I don't hear this by then? Because
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, you know what? If I don't hear by Friday, I know I can email y'all,
Yeah.
and then I should expect a response. But at least it's created a dynamic that I have some agency and control in the situation,
Mm-hmm.
which I think
Mm-hmm.
is huge.
And now I have a task. I have an action during this time of inactivity. I know that if I'm not, if I don't hear back by Friday, which again, recruiters, hiring managers, if you say you're going to communicate something by Friday, communicate something. Even if hey, sorry, it's taking longer than we thought. I'll be sure to follow up with you, right? Um, but yeah, it gives you something to anchor on instead of just feeling like you're lost in the abyss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I like Jillian's comment about, like, don't take anything personal.
yeah. It's tough, but
It's an important, it's almost like worth writing on a post-it note and sticking on your computer.
yeah,
It's hard to keep top of mind,
yeah,
but it is ultimately all you got, right?
yeah,
Like, it's what keeps it's what keeps you moving.
yeah, yeah,
So look, we've talked about a lot, right? And I think have touched on a lot of the things that are on, at least had been on my minds at the points in time when I was a candidate or a
yeah,
recruiter and trying to control for. I think a lot of these things have been exacerbated in these more difficult times,
yeah,
as the job market is an unhealthy sort of place right now, with more candidates than there are opportunities, or at least perception of, when
yeah,
there is more impersonal interactions than there should be. So there's like
yeah,
a yearning for human connection.
yeah.
Um, what would it look like to bring more compassion into the interview process?
I love that question, man. I love that question. One of the things I try to anchor on, and I've done this for every team I've led, even as an individual contributor, your ability to balance empathy with pragmatism will distinguish you, not just in your career, but in your personal life, right? So if you find ways to genuinely show or express that you understand what these candidates are going through right now, right? And again, I'm talking to the recruiters and the hiring managers right now. Find a way to make that connection, because even if this candidate isn't right for this opportunity, there's no telling what's around the corner, right? Things constantly change. Even if they're not your gold medalist, who's to say your gold medalist isn't getting a better competing offer right now, and you're going to have to go back to your well. Find ways to connect genuinely with the candidate pool, understand what this market is doing to people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you truly tap into that, then you'll build processes that have dignity baked into it, right? That have these turnaround times for communication, that have these turnaround times for feedback to your hiring team. You build that into your process. And as a recruiter, as a professional, you should be coming to your hiring teams with that. Hey, this is the SLA. This is the expectation of working with me as your recruiter, right? This is how I need you to show up if you actually want this role filled. And at the point that it's not, then we need to have a conversation, because it's not just doing damage to me, it's doing damage to our brand. Um, and we know what damage that's doing internally to the candidate.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we wrap over the next minute, will you make that interview pregame, emotional pregame available for folks?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Because
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to have that, like, as a checklist that people can just think about as they're going through and
Yeah.
thinking through. Insert song here. I saw Formation and I'm That Girl in the chat as a
Nice.
song.
Nice.
Mine is Win by J Rock, when I need
Okay.
that boost, or All Right by Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
But would love to see that. I don't know, as a post or as a document that can be shared out.
Got you.
Um, Holly,
Yeah, man.
thanks for suggesting that we do this. I think this is the conversation we need to be having right now.
Yeah.
And anything else that we can do just to help people through navigate the emotional toll of this, I think is time well spent, is a message worth delivering. And I really appreciate you for prioritizing this.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for creating the platform for us to do it.
All right, man.
All right. I'll see you all. Thank you.
Thank y'all.